I'm back at the Reilly Bird Sanctuary today. That is named after Reilly Bird. It's not the Reilly Bird Sanctuary. It's between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning on May 4th, and I'm here today to listen for birds. My name is Nick Stowe. I'm an ecologist, and this is the Ecology of the Ottawa Valley. I have my Merlin bird application with me today because I am actually pretty bad at identifying birds by sound. So I'm going to turn this on. We'll listen for 1 minute and see what we hear. So, let's see what we've got. Well, Merlin is telling me that we heard a pileated woodpecker. That would have been the knocking off one direction. Blue-headed vireo, very common in this type of forest. Black and white warbler. Ovenbird, that's the teacher bird. Teacher, 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 teacher. Ruby-crowned kinglet. And the first bird we heard was a winter wren. Now I've heard a lot more birds than that as I've been walking through the forest this morning, but for a 1 minute point count, that's not too bad, especially considering we really only have two habitat types here. We have this cedar forest, low cedar forest behind me, and then we have this youngish upland forest around me. There's the pileated again. So that's not a bad diversity of birds. I expected it to be a little noisier this morning. May is the peak migration time for birds in southern Canada. Although, there's that parula again. Although the peak generally comes more mid to late May than the first week of May. I actually have probably a noisier community of birds in my own backyard, where I have a woodlot, a little creek running. My neighbor's got their feeder up still. Mine I took down a couple of weeks ago. But it's still a nice chorus here. Are these woods too quiet? A recent study showed that over the past 50 years, the abundance of migratory birds in North America has declined by about 30%. In 1970, it was estimated there were approximately 10 billion birds making the trip north across North America. Based on decades of survey data and, surprisingly, the use of radar, we now estimate that there are about 7 billion birds that migrate. One of the big categories of birds that has declined are the forest birds. A loss of approximately 1 billion forest birds from North America. There's another 700 to 800 million grassland birds that have been lost. And then losses of a variety of birds of other types. Surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, there have been some gains. Waterfowl numbers have increased over the past 50 years, largely as a result of conservation efforts, habitat restoration efforts by organizations like Ducks Unlimited. Apparently, raptor numbers have increased. So it's not entirely bad news, and those numbers do show us that when we take action, we can make a difference in the abundance and diversity of birds in Canada and North America. What can we do? First of all, if we have cats, keep them indoors. A fairly recent study estimated that somewhere between 1 and 4 billion birds are lost each year to predation by cats. Now, I treat those numbers with a high degree of skepticism. I've looked at that study in depth. It has some problems, but there is no doubt that cats do kill enormous numbers of birds each year. Both domestic cats that are allowed to roam freely and also feral cats. So one of the best things we can do to help conserve our native birds is to keep our cats indoors. Another big cause of bird mortality is collisions with buildings. And it's not just the high, well-lit towers of the cities that result in bird deaths. It's collisions with windows on normal residential homes, those windows that are at ground level. There are conditions that lead birds to fly into those windows, and the majority of birds that do end up dying. You can apply films to your windows that will let the birds know that your windows are there. These films won't obstruct your view, they won't stop the light from coming into your home, but they will dramatically cut down on the number of birds that fly into windows. Most of all, we can protect and conserve habitats for birds. Habitat loss here in the northern part of North America, and then in the wintering grounds for migratory birds in the south, habitat loss is the leading cause of the decline in bird populations. Reilly Bird donated this property to Ontario Nature. I've talked about it before. I talked about the Mayor's Bay esker that runs through this property and how it contributes to the hydrology of the creek that runs through the property. But this is also an island of biodiversity. We have this abundance of birds. We have this wonderfully diverse forest that runs from the creek up to the top of the esker. The different habitats along the way. We have an abundance of salamanders in these woods. There are salamander surveys that are done. If come back here later in the summer and start looking over the forest floor and the woody debris, find an amazing abundance of fungi, mushrooms of different types. Start flipping over smaller pieces of wood looking for slime molds. You can look for insects. A conserved piece of property like this is an amazing gift for the future. And where we have the opportunity to contribute to the conservation of these places, either through management, stewardship of lands that we own, or support for conservation organizations, land trusts, we should do so. It's probably the most concrete step we can take to ensure that we always have the sounds of these birds to cherish. What draws birds north each year? It is the enormous abundance of insects that begin to appear in May and which carry on through the summer. Right now I am sitting beside the Ecology wetland, very close to the Reilly Bird Sanctuary. I don't know if it is apparent in the video, but there are thousands of very small mayflies or other insects that are hatching from this wetland or resting up in these trees and grass. And all along the shore of this wetland, in the trees and the shrubs and the grass, are these tiny warblers flitting out, catching these insects on the fly or picking them off the grass. This is what supports the billions of birds that come north each year. As I approached this wetland quietly as I could, unfortunately it was not quiet enough. I caught sight of a broad-winged hawk flying off across the wetland and out of sight. Obviously spooked as I approached. Far across the wetland I saw a great blue heron take off just a few minutes ago. I can hear spring peepers, and all around me a chorus of birds. This is probably one of the best places to listen for birds, at the edge of a wetland like this, particularly one that's so diverse with this forest behind me. These are special places. It's now about 8:30, getting toward the time when the forest tends to quieten. The best times for bird watching are generally from just before dawn until about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then in the evening from about 6 p.m. until dusk. So I'm going to head home and maybe have a cup of coffee, get a nap. But on Saturday, May 10th at Britannia Park in Ottawa, I will be taking part in Migratory Bird Day. This is an event organized by Ottawa City Councillor Kavanagh, Safe Wings Ottawa, Bird Friendly Ottawa, and a number of other organizations. And it will be focused on bird migration, creating bird-friendly spaces in cities and communities, bird conservation. There will be information tables set up. There will be guided walks around Britannia Park and Mud Lake, which is one of the birding hotspots in Ottawa. And if you have the time and interest to turn out on Saturday morning for that, then hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks for joining me, and hope you will join me again next time.